Well, we're all pretty lucky to be able to have a little safety and contentment and strength, and to take care of ourselves happily in a world that's pretty tough, as we know, and so many instances of injustice and trouble. So we're really lucky that we have this week to support one another, to see another side of our human life. So I really want to thank all of you for being here and supporting me to do this. I wouldn't be doing this probably without you all. And I want to especially thank Jeff and Brian for adding this retreat that we didn't expect to be having and doing all that it takes to organize it. There's a lot of organizing that goes on, and I think Brian and Jeff do a lot of that, most of that. And so it's very easy for me to just show up when they've done all the work, so I'm very grateful. Thanks for that. And, you know, I'm sure you're feeling the same as me, that what a pleasure it is to hear our dear friends who we know so well talking about what they love to talk about, so that we can listen about life, about practice, about the path, and everything that we've heard already from Sylvia and from Jeff, and yesterday afternoon, evening from Joanna. I know probably it's true for you as it is for me. It's already helped. It's already helped to give us a different feeling about the times we're living in and what's possible. And it is so simple. You know, what we're doing is so simple. Being alive is so simple, so great, so wondrous, even with all the problems, when you take the time to pay attention. It's so wondrous and beautiful. And isn't it amazing, as Sylvia wondered on our behalf the first night, that we can't just, all of us collectively, just recognize what a miracle it is that we're alive at all, and feel that for one another, and just get along, you know, just get along and cooperate. We so need to do that now. Isn't it amazing that there's so much contention and confusion when we're so simply alive together? And this is what we're trying to do, I think, this week, isn't it? Really, in the end, it's not even meditation. The meditation helps a lot, of course, but it's not the meditation. It's not a big fancy thing that we're trying to do, just to feel our human life and appreciate it, and stop making so much trouble for ourselves and one another. Just to enter the stream, as we heard from Joanna yesterday, just slip into the stream of practice, which is just the stream of our actual real life. So I've done a lot of Jewish meditation retreats. I don't know how many, but really a lot. And whenever I look forward to a Jewish, I mean, I've done a lot of Buddhist meditation retreats too, of course, more of those. But I look forward especially to the Jewish meditation retreats because it gives me a chance to study Judaism a lot, if I have to give a talk, about Judaism, I have to study Judaism because it's not something that I know so much about. So I really have to think about it and read and reflect. And that's how I learn. So I always learn a lot from every meditation retreat, not only from the other teachers, but also from my own studies that I wouldn't ordinarily do. But today, maybe possibly for the first time, I'm not going to give a Jewish talk. I'm going to give a Buddhist talk today. And it occurred to me, maybe all this time, when I've been giving all these Jewish talks, people have been listening politely, and they've been too polite to say, well, why don't you talk about Buddhism? We actually would rather hear what you have to say about Buddhism, since you know more about that probably. How come you keep harping on about Judaism? We all know a lot more about that than you do, and why are you going on like that? It's possible that all this time, nobody's ever mentioned that to me. So today I'm going to give a Buddhist talk, and the reason why I'm going to do it is because the other day I was visiting Rabbi Jonathan Slater's chevra. They had a day-long event, and he asked me if I would come to be with his group because they were reading my book, The World Could Be Otherwise. And he said, and we're on chapter whatever it is, and could you talk about this chapter on joyful effort? So that was great. I was invited to a Jewish meditation group, and they specifically asked me to talk about Buddhism. So I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. So I did that, and I thought, well, why didn't I also talk about that today? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about joyful effort. And I think that it's a particularly good idea, as all things always work out in this way, it's a particularly good idea to talk about it now because our theme is the fragility of life and suffering and compassion that goes along with our seriously recognizing the preciousness and the fragility of life. And these are weighty things to contemplate. So maybe it's a good idea to bring up the joyfulness and the zest and the energy of the effort that we make in practice as a kind of counterforce to the main thing we're contemplating this week. I think it was Joanna who in her talk used the word bodhisattva, the bodhisattva path, and I guess nowadays everybody knows that word. I think I checked recently, it actually is now an English word in any English dictionary, bodhisattva, not considered a foreign word anymore. Bodhisattva is a spiritual practitioner who cares about others, who's passionate in caring about others, who wants to mainly benefit others. And the path of the bodhisattva, the practice of the bodhisattva, is classically defined by 6 practices called the 6 paramitas. Probably most of you know this already. Most Jewish meditators know all about Buddhism too, right? 6 paramitas: giving, ethical conduct, patience, joyful effort, my subject for today, meditation, and transcendent wisdom. So I'm talking about the 4th of the 6 practices of a bodhisattva. Joyful effort, in Sanskrit, virya paramita. And there's a very famous 8th century Indian text that has now been translated into English at least a half a dozen times, probably more, called Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So mostly what I'm going to do in my talk today is just read some of the verses from that chapter and talk about what its author, Shantideva, has to say about how to cultivate joyful effort in practice. So none of us here is a stranger to the idea of making effort. Here we are, right, in our retreat, every one of us making effort. And it's not like you have to go to a retreat to make effort, right? Don't we all make a lot of effort every single day in our lives? I mean, life is making effort. Nobody gets to, lay in bed all day long and have everything taken care of for them, except maybe if you're sick or something. So making effort is, life is effort. So we know about making effort. We all make effort. But what kind of effort? And what's the quality of the effort? And what's the motivation? Why do we think we do what we do? Do we make effort because it's our duty? Do we make effort because, well, it's just a necessity and we have to? We're forced into it, kind of. We don't want to do it, but we have to. If I don't make lunch, I don't eat. I'm necessarily thrilled to make lunch, but I want to eat, so I have to do it. Or it's just a habit, I can't stop doing the things I do. I'm so used to it, I just do them automatically. Or maybe in the case of Judaism, right, where we might make some effort as Jews to express our Judaism. Maybe some of us here are fully observant Jews, I don't know. But if we are, why do we do that? Because it's our identity? Because our family did it and we couldn't possibly not do it, to be disloyal to them? They expect it of us, our community expects it of us. Or maybe we just want to be a good person, do the right thing. Or maybe, actually, we don't even really know, why we do the things that we do. We don't even really understand, why am I doing this life that I'm living? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Why am I doing it? Or maybe in the case specifically of meditation practice, why are we doing it? It's good for us, maybe, we think. Meditation is good for me. I need it to cope with my stress or change my way of life. Anyway, I'm saying we all have, however examined or unexamined, we all have some reasons behind what we do, the kind of effort we make. And then there's probably reasons behind those reasons that we are not so aware of. But here, in the practice of joyful effort, something entirely different is proposed. That we make effort fully inspired by love and joy and zest and strength. This is a revolutionary idea. It sort of implies that we would have a different attitude in our lives and in our practice. Rather than, usually our attitude, let's be honest, we are worried about ourselves, about our world, about our family. We're trying to make things better. We're trying to improve things. We're trying to feel better. We're trying to be happier. None of that would be our motivation. None of that would have anything to do with why we're doing this. We would be doing this if we're practicing joyful effort. We would be doing this because we opened up our eyes and we looked around at the world and we could see, with our eyes, we could actually see that the greatest thing you could do is practice. It's the most fun, the most wonderful, and the most uplifting thing you could do. And that there is actually no other possible way that you could live. It isn't even a choice. It's obvious. There's no other way that you could possibly live other than a life of practice as we're understanding it this week. Any other way of life you would see is just going to bring pain and sorrow and trouble. The regular way you looked at your whole life before, forget about it. It was not going to work, never going to work. No wonder you were having trouble. It was never going to work. Now you get it. The only possible way would be a life of spiritual path. And that's the only thing you want to do, is to practice the way. Now that doesn't mean, of course, obviously, only meditation. No, we're not going to meditate all the time. But this attitude of, may I be safe, may I be strong, may I take care of myself happily, and wish that for everybody else, and enact that for everybody else. That's the only way that it makes any sense at all to live. And you know what? This is, I think, the hidden, but not so hidden, heart of the Jewish path. Because lately I've been saying the V'ahavta every day at the end of my meditation. Think about it. And you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I'm commanding you this day should be inscribed on your heart. What is that but joyful effort, right? Joyful effort. All your heart and all your soul and all your might engraved on your heart, so that that's the only thing you ever want to do. So I don't know how this all strikes you, If we were in person, I can usually look at people's faces and see if they're dismayed or confused or happy with what I've said, but on the screen it's sort of less clear, so I don't know what you think about this, but probably most of us don't actually feel that way, right? That's not where we are at. And if you think it's a nice idea, well, that sounds good, you might then say, well, how am I going to get that attitude? What do I have to do? Give me the practices. Is there a handout that you could maybe send in a PDF that I could figure out how to get this attitude? And no, there's no handout. There's no way. You can't figure out how to get this attitude. You cannot make this happen in you. No steps. But if you just trust your practice and keep on going and just do the best you can, whatever kind of effort you make, this attitude actually eventually will arise in you. It just will come. And you won't even notice it maybe, except one day you'll realize, oh yeah, I do feel that way actually. I didn't even notice, but I do. That's why in spiritual practice, you always have to keep doing it. The same thing over and over and over again. We've been saying, oh, you recite the same liturgy over and over and over again. It's always different. You do the same thing in meditation, You're not progressing at all. You're doing the same practice you did, in my case, 50 years ago when somebody first told me how to meditate. I'm doing the same thing, I haven't advanced one bit. And yet it's never boring. So repetition is the soul of spirituality. And it makes you realize there is no repetition. Now, joyful effort is a subtle matter because it's not exactly the way you might think it is. For instance, sometimes you practice joyful effort by taking a nap. Or if you're ill, you practice joyful effort by staying in bed and not making any effort. That's how you practice joyful effort when you're sick. And if you're a very old person, you practice joyful effort not by rushing around and looking like you're, full of vim and vigor, but you practice it by going slowly with a smile, or maybe not a smile. So in other words, it's not a matter of the outward signs. This is what it looks like. It should look like this or that. We don't know what it looks like. But we do know inside of ourselves that we have that feeling of delight and joy just to be living this life and making the effort every day to practice. Now, our mind is not a closed box, like encased inside the brain, and nothing can get in from the outside. No, actually, our mind is quite porous, and it is totally continuous with the world. What the world feels, the mind feels. So the world changes and our mind changes. And we all know how, even you notice in the retreat so much, you have various states of mind. You could be like thrilled and happy and joyful one minute and, totally destroyed the next minute. Because the mind is subject to change and conditioning. Happy, sad, buoyant, depressed. The mind will be as it is according to conditions. So it's not a matter of holding, a certain mind that should always be the same. But no matter what our state of mind is, we can always practice joyful effort. Because we can always have a rising spirit that meets whatever state of mind appears. So let's say I'm depressed, which I think is a reasonable thing to feel when conditions that would make you depressed are present. Why don't you feel depressed? You should, right? But suppose I have that depressed feeling, I can say to myself, oh yeah, this is a very tough state of mind, and I know why, because there are very good reasons why. And also, a lot of other people feel this way. So, good. I get to feel what people feel. I'm feeling it now. That's good. I understand them. I'm close to them. And when you meet it like that, without saying, it shouldn't be there, it's what's wrong with me that it's there, you meet it like that and appreciate it, then it's very, very different. It's not you, lonely person, sad and inadequate because you're depressed. It's the human feeling. And it's a moment when you're invited to practice joyful effort. So you turn your misfortunes into treasures, opportunities to meet your mind with joyful effort. So what we are always trying to do is to understand the practice of virya paramita, or joyful effort, to aspire to it even when we don't feel we have it, and to just keep on going, and with the faith that it will eventually appear, and we don't need to worry about it or say, how come it's not here yet, or when is it coming, anything like that. Just keep going, trusting that it will be there eventually. And it's always like that in practice, isn't it? I mean, to me, like, one of the really nasty bad things about spirituality, over the generations, and I think we probably can, many people, I've heard so many stories from people that they felt this in their childhood, they felt, wait a minute, this spirituality that I'm seeing here around me and the adults who are practicing it, this is not honest. A lot of kids feel that way. At some point, they awaken to the fact that this is not honest. And because, religion is what it is, it's often dishonest, right? Not intentionally, maybe, or in some pernicious way, but in some way that's very important. It's dishonest. So we cannot be dishonest in our practice. We have to be really honest with ourselves. Even as we're aspiring to cultivate various kinds of wholesome and beautiful attitudes, we have to be very honest. Wow, I'm trying to practice joyful effort, but the truth of the matter is, I am not joyful at all. I'm a crabby person. And right now, I'm really crabby. That's the truth. We don't have to yell at ourselves for that. And we don't have to imagine that that's sort of what we are or who we are. But we do have to be honest about what is our mind right now. Always, always honest. Spiritual practice, if it's not based on honesty, it's just going to be weak. You're blown away in a minute. You can't pretend your way through life, So we're honest. And at the same time, we have our aspirations. We really are determined to keep going with our practice. We really are determined, eventually, when we can, when it happens, to develop joyful effort. So this is always the way it is. Point one, I'm honest about where it is, where I'm at right now. Point two, I know where I'm trying to go. I'm in that stream. I'm flowing with that stream. So now I'm going to, after that long introduction, God knows how much time I have to finally go to Shantideva's chapter, but I will go to it and read at least a few of the verses. And there's two metaphors that I hope I get to in the chapter that I want to underscore, because they're beautiful metaphors for what it feels like to practice joyful effort. And they're very beautiful. One of them is, it's like an elephant, on a very hot jungle day. Can you imagine how hot an elephant must be? Like they're so heavy, right? And on a really hot day, it must be really tough being an elephant. So on a really hot day, an elephant sees a pond and plunges into that pond. It's so nice, so cooling to plunge into that pond. That's the feeling of joyful effort. What a pleasure to be together practicing. What a pleasure to meet every moment of my mind with joyful effort. And the second image, which is comes at the very end, it's the last verse. He says, the Indians, as you know, beautiful weave. The Indian cotton is really special, beautiful stuff, and they weave some very diaphanous, beautiful cotton fabrics. So he says, practicing joyful effort is like a cotton fabric that is just sort of wafting in a gentle, warm breeze. It's very beautiful. In other words, no forcing. No forcing. We're not pressing, forcing. We're just taking the breeze of what life is and responding to it sensitively, the way a piece of cotton responds to the wind. So anyway, I'm going to I have about maybe 15 minutes. I'm going to share with you a few of my favorite verses. First of all, toward the beginning, he says, what is this practice? This is, by the way, maybe possibly the first English translation, at least that I'm aware of, from the 70s by Stephen Batchelor, who used to be a Tibetan monastic and learned Tibetan. And he translated this text from the Tibetan, I think. And you can find it online as a free downloadable PDF. It's kind of delightful. You could have it on your iPad, and Look it up anytime you feel like it. Anyway, toward the beginning, so he translates enthusiastic, he translates joyful effort, what I'm calling joyful effort. His translation is enthusiasm. So he says, what is enthusiasm? It's finding joy in what is wholesome. So in other words, what's good, we think generally, our attitude toward what's good is it's like taking medicine. We know it's good for you, but it's probably not pleasant. What's more pleasant is like stuff that isn't so good, maybe slightly illicit. That's the good stuff. And we don't want to do that exactly because it's not good for us, but sort of we like that more, We're titillated by it. But no, this says, no, change your mind so that you really, really love what's good and realize how dangerous what is not good is for you. And what's the opposing factor to this kind of enthusiasm based on love for what's good? The opposing factors are three: laziness, attraction to what is bad, and the third is very interesting. Batchelor translates, despising oneself out of despondency. So laziness, I think we know what that is. And, we're so attached to like laying around that we don't realize how much joy there is in activity. And the antidote to that one is remembering how short your life actually is. And those of us who are a little older, we have that in spades, right? How much longer is this going to go on? Not 25 years. Not maybe 10, maybe? Remember the last 10 years? How fast did that go? Really fast. Faster than the previous 10 years. Time is speeding up. So Shantideva, the method of education here is to create kind of arguments that you would maybe memorize and repeat to yourself to convince yourself of these things. And he goes into great detail. He says, people think, well, I know I'm going to die, but so maybe when I get close to that, then I'll start getting serious about my spirituality. He says, but if you do that, before you know it, you'll be on your deathbed and you'll be totally freaked out. Oh my God, I just got started here. And now you want me to leave? I'm not ready. I have so much more to do. Don't let that happen to you. Start now taking care of things so that when you come to that moment and he describes all this and your family is all standing around you, don't let them be freaked out when they see how unready you are. Let them be happy to know that you're okay, which you will be if you've been taking care of your practice all this time. So don't be lazy, talking us out of being lazy. And then to just skip to the third one, this is fascinating. He says that despondency over our capacities, in other words, the idea that I am just an ordinary person without much capability spiritually. I just don't have what it takes. I don't feel like I'm so, enough of a person to really transcend myself. I'm just an ordinary schmo, right? Don't we all think that? Well, if we thought of ourselves that way, then of course we wouldn't make the kind of heroic effort necessary to totally transform our lives and the lives of those around us. He then quotes a proof text, just like we do all the time in Judaism. Quotes a sutra where the Buddha says something like, even a fly or a mosquito or a bee will become awakened someday. And all human beings are destined to be Buddhas, with one exception, me. Now wait, does that make sense? Everybody, every flea can be awakened, but I can't be awakened because I'm too much of a schlemiel? How arrogant is that, right? I'm the only one in the whole universe that can't be awakened. I'm the only exception. No, that is really, don't hold on to that view. Of course you can do it. You're a human being. You're born with that capacity, and you're born with that obligation. So you have to kind of remember that. And when you feel bad about yourself, and when you don't take seriously your efforts in spiritual practice, realize that it's because you're creating a fantasy character that you call yourself. You're totally convinced it's you, but it's not you. That's not you. The real you is a noble creature, fully capable of the highest nobility that human beings can manifest, and that's you. Then he goes to so those are the forces that prevent us from having enthusiasm, and those are the antidotes to them, very briefly. And what are the supports for joyful effort? He lists 4 supports: aspiration, steadfastness, joy, and rest. Aspiration, he says, is developed through recognizing the difficulty of human life without practice. And it's true, you know. If you have no spiritual practice, life is very tough. I mean, paranoia is a normal condition for someone who has 0 spiritual practice, because everybody looks like they're out to get you all the time, you know. You could be dishonored with every look and every gesture. So develop the aspiration for the path. And remember the benefits of the path that we know very well. You know, some ease and joy in living, lots more love, more beautiful relationships. There's a million reasons why this is so helpful, and no good reasons why you shouldn't do it. Steadfastness is, he says, is actually self-confidence. And it's very much like what he said earlier in the text. To know who we really are. To give up our conventional, habitual idea of who we are. And recognize, you know, like the person that you think you are, that's just the outfit that the Buddha has decided to wear in this lifetime that you're living. The Buddha decided to put on a costume that looks exactly like Sylvia. So it's not like Sylvia is not Sylvia, or any one of us is not any one of us. Yes, we are that, but that's the costume on top of what we more truly are. And we only see the costume, and we actually think that's us. Thinking that the costume is us, he calls self-importance. So we have to see through our self-importance to our real self-confidence. It's a beautiful thought. It means that there has never been another human being who's more than you. Never. Never will be. Another human being that is more worthy of respect and honor than you. And there's never been a human being born, and there never will be, that's less worthy of respect and honor than you are. So it's not like you're better than somebody else, but you are ultimately and absolutely worthwhile. And so is everyone else. And that's why the injustice of the world, where some people are considered, you know, important and worthwhile and given tremendous wealth, and other people are considered nothing and nobody cares about them, we don't even think about them, you can't stand that. because you know better. You know how worthwhile you are. And that's how you know that everyone else is equally worthwhile. So the difference between self-importance and true self-confidence. And based on that self-importance, based on that true self-confidence, you practice. And when you find yourself getting lazy, you realize, oh, I forgot who I am. I forgot who I am. Now, to be sure, you can goof off and you can have fun and all that. It's not like you're supposed to be like serious all the time. But just don't forget who you are. This is Buddha having fun. This is Buddha at the barbecue. This is Buddha having a glass of wine. Whoops, maybe that's enough wine. Buddhas don't drink that much wine. just that much, but not more. So like that. And then, just to mention the last one, rest. It's just when Sylvia was saying, may I take care of myself happily, taking a rest when I need, being moderate with myself, easy on myself. That's part of joyful effort. In my book, I talk about, you should exercise and, eat the right foods and all this. It's all part of joyful effort. Taking care of yourself happily is totally an obligation. There's no sense of self-sacrifice in this, because it's not good to self-sacrifice, or self-denial and make you crabby or something like that. That's no good. How are you going to be a source of joy to your friends if you're not a source of joy to yourself? So you have to have, the best health you can have, and so on and so on. Take care of yourself. So rest is a part of joyful effort. In the very first verse, and as I said in the last verse, Shantideva talks about wind. The first stanza, the first four-line stanza, ends with these two lines. Just as there is no movement without wind, so nothing will happen in our practice without joyful effort. And then at the end, as I said, just like a cotton cloth. Let's see if I can find the exact verse here in Stephen's translation. Just as the wind blowing back and forth controls the movement of a piece of cotton, so shall I be controlled by joyful effort. And in this way, I will accomplish everything. So the last thought here is that I find it really interesting that in the beginning and in the end of this chapter, he's talking about the wind. And wind is such a very important notion, in Judaism and in Jewish meditation. We were talking already about ruach and neshama and breath and soul. And the breath that we're breathing, think about it. It's not your breath. It's coming from the world outside of you, right? It's the wind. It's the same wind. The ruach hovering over the face of the deep before there's even anything. We're breathing it in and we're breathing it out. And it's that wind that moves us beautifully through our spiritual practice. So the only thing we have to do is show up and keep doing it, doing our best. I think we're also conditioned to performance and performance anxiety. We think we have to, what am I doing wrong if I'm not, feeling perfect? What did I do wrong? I think Joanna was saying that. Never mind about that. Just show up and relax and do your best. So that's a big effort to show up. You made a big effort to be here this week, and you're here. And you're making a big effort to do the retreat. That's all you need to do. Just keep doing it. And then eventually, you'll see. You'll see. And not only that, but every step of the way you'll also see. It's not like we're waiting for later. Every step of the way we also see. So it's exactly 12 o'clock. That's one thing about Zoom, you know, you've got your computer here, and you can see the minutes ticking by, and you can start exactly on time and end exactly on time. So now it's noon. Thank you very, very much for listening to me. I really appreciate it. You're very kind and generous. You know, if you were critical, see, we soften you up with all this meditation, so your critical mind falls away, and almost anything we say, it can sound good, right? So I depend on that, and I appreciate your kind and generous listening. And now, if you're where I am in California, you're going to go have lunch. If you're in New York, you're going to do something in the afternoon. If you're somewhere in between or elsewhere, I don't know what, you're going to do something in between.